Right. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time of the week. It is Thursday night, 8 o'clock for DIRTBAGZ Live, episode 1. So you can see that we've already got 5 people in, and DC, we're already straight in, mate. And
well, I was
we're
going
already
to say,
getting asked the important question. We're getting asked the important questions. Are we on the bopper tonight?
well, you look like you're on the bopper, mate. You're on the rum tally. That's wild. Bit of cane cutters fine.
When in Rome, mate.
Yes, I hear you. Where is Rome exactly tonight, Joshua?
Emerald, mate. I am in Emerald. I'm currently sitting at the AB Power work office recording this
nice.
again. So
living the dream. Got to be a worker.
Got to be a worker, mate. No mun, no fun, a wise man once said to me. So now, luckily, Dan and I were both able to be in the same place at the same time for Finke. We managed to join forces for that. But we've had to split up again. Dan's back home in Yeppoon looking after our business there, and I'm away in Emerald doing a bit of work at the moment. But still on that.
Wait, what do you mean, Josh? We aren't full-time podcasters? Surely
full-time commentators either.
Oh, my goodness. We're not commentators at all. Apparently on the bopper.
Coffee. Yeah, well, it's a new drinking game, so.
Little sip.
Yep. Little sip, sticking to it.
Dave Polino on it. No, very good.
Yeah.
Hey, now, obviously, Josh, we're going to get straight into it. Mate, obviously the key to this episode is going to be all about Finke 22. It was a cracker of a year. But interestingly, some big changes, obviously, Josh, I don't know where you want to start with this, but, for all the ladies and gentlemen that weren't allowed to, make that trek out there this year, obviously for whatever reasons, it's, been cranking back up. There has been some huge spectator changes. There's been some, race changes. It's interesting with respect to the numbers, Josh, this year weren't quite as large as they have been in previous years. And many accounts seem to be that's because of the new regulations. The new info is that you've got to do, and Josh, correct me if I'm wrong on this, mate. I'm just winging it here, but it's 2 races that you've got to do before you can actually race Finke now to be eligible in the cars. And you've also got to have your MA license and do a couple of club levels. So, back in our day, Josh, when we were young fellas just rocking dirt bikes and that, we literally went and got a license at MA because we had motorcycle licenses, and you were allowed to race that race as your one and only race of ever if you wanted to race it like that. But there was a lot of first timers and interesting people that raced it only purely. And again, this is probably the difference between Finke and many other races, is that the appeal is that Finke has such a draw that you don't necessarily have to be a racer to race it, do you? I mean, most of the guys that race St. George or, any of these like Loveday and all of those are going to be regular racers, whereas at Finke, there is plenty of guys that buy a Polaris, a Can-Am, a buggy, even a trophy truck, just to tick that bucket list off the item. And it's the same with the motorbike guys, guys that are essentially enduro or adventure riders out of Sydney, Victoria, Melbourne, any of those big cities and that. And then they go, hey, we've got to go and do Finke once in our lives. I won't say it's a bad thing, because I do think it's a good thing. You should have that, at least that skill set, but it's put how do I word this, Josh? It's put another barrier in front of you if you've got to race. And I think that we saw that this year with not full numbers. Is that a fair statement?
No, I think it also adds another cost, another time, effort to get there. Finke is super time. It chews up so much time just to get out to Alice Springs, and then prepping the car and everything like that, or the bike, getting ready to race. But I think you're right. There was a story floating around that Greg Campbell actually had one of his rented Can-Ams that you could race wasn't the guy wasn't eligible to be able to race anymore leading up to it. So because he hadn't gotten his races in, so they offered that off as a last minute to I believe one of Comiskey's crew climbed into that and raced it. But yeah, so I think you're definitely right, Dan. It does add a whole nother dimension to it. Not only the cars, not only the bikes, but hey, a big shout out to the Finke crew. One of the things that I noticed, I had to dash down the track on Sunday morning for a little bit just to help out some of the method guys down there. One of the things I did notice is that they'd invested. I mean, they always have with their ad campaign and everything like that. But man, they had invested so much time and effort and resource into a lot of signage. The big thing this year was 20 meters back from the track, and a lot more information out about where are bad places to stand. The outside of corners, over blind crests and stuff like that, and essentially along the side of the track, once you hit the service, from the moment you turned off past the airport, probably about every 500 meters, I reckon, there was a sign that was hammered into the side of the road about how far back you should be, and information about that on safety for spectators. So they have stepped it up, and they're not just resting on their laurels to try and keep this great race going. So it's a tough one, man, for the committee.
Well, what I was going to say is, listen, big props. That's what they needed to do. I think it's a huge positive.
Yes.
But there is no question it changed the feel. A lot of the drivers that we talked to mentioned about how it was almost a little ghost towny running through town, where normally you can see the race cars, there's plenty of people sort of lining the side of straights. And again, can't suggest this enough. It's the right move to control that crowd, but how it's affected and changed that feel of Finke, if that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, look, I will say this though. I think it was, this is just going off the old itometer here, mate. I think crowd-wise, it was actually quite a big year for Finke. I think 2020, the cancellation, and then 2021, obviously with the last minute, was it Victoria? I believe it was Victoria because of Matt Hansen not being able to race, and Shannon and that, and Owens not getting there. And then was it also South Australia would have had to quarantine for 2 weeks if they went into the Northern Territory? So I think that probably had knocked spectator numbers around it, mate. From where we were on the track, we on Sunday we were just past the Alice Springs Off-Road Club, in between where the entry was for there and to where the Tree of Knowledge was, and it was just packed, full of cars, full of spectators. Yeah, I think spectator wise, it was probably one of the biggest years that I think I've ever experienced out there.
I totally agree. Thursday night at the street party was madness. Toby, who we had on our podcast, if you're listening along, make sure you throw back out. So, and have a listen to that after we finish, obviously. Toby was on our podcast, as well as some other great guys that we had. We also had Bo Robinson and Paul Wheel leading up to Finke, Paul was after Finke, but we actually filmed it prior to Finke, and it was a great conversation that I enjoyed talking to those guys, that are at the top level of their sport. But it was so interesting because I think that, it was crazy to see those numbers, Josh, this year. Again, I can't believe the street party. It's always great. I'm not trying, but, there was like a 5-hour line to get and sign with Toby and that. It was so good. And I think that that's a real key there, is that it's just growing and growing. And I think that it's growing in the right way, because now you're getting up close and access and personal with these guys at scrutineering, and we're controlling the track situation, which is always going to be an issue at Finke for the officials. Because again, what makes that track brilliant is also what makes it quite scary as an official. I'm telling you, I would not like to be the official on that race. So again, to all the Finke crew, Kelsey Branford and all those legends and Yoff, and again, everyone that makes that happen. First off, big shout out to you guys. That was great. It was just brilliant. Start to finish, it was run professionally. It's hard. You'll never please absolutely everyone. But I tell you what, it was a cracker from all the motorbikes, all the guys, the interviews, everything that we saw. We had an absolute blast. And now, Josh, I suppose that brings us, we're yapping about not even the race at the moment. We're just talking about sort of the politics of it. But the other side of that was that if you listen along, we got the call up on Monday to jump on board. We were always working with Method, with Mickey Taylor and those boys, and Clayton Taylor and those guys. We were looking at doing Saturday. We ended up on crew for the whole weekend, working with Josh, the other Josh, and it was an absolute hoot. We had the two girls as well that they were doing interviews and working along nice. Oh, yeah, we are on the bopper.
The bopper.
Absolutely. Man, everyone, this is going to be a long podcast. But anyway, again, if you're not in with that on joke, when you talk for 30, 40 hours, it is amazing how many things that you just don't realize that you say regularly. Like, it's funny because I wouldn't have even thought that was something that we say a lot other than in joking. And it turns out we say it a lot. Oi, mate.
Yeah. But shout out to the bike riders, because they threw down. They gave us the opportunity to say, that sentence regularly.
Gotcha. Yeah, gotcha. I like it. No, but it was an absolute cracker. And I mean, it's going to be interesting because this is always the case. Like Toby Price ran a beautiful race, start to finish.
Yep.
Ran it like a boss. And let's be honest, no one expected anything different from him. He's got the right people around him. He's got the right team. He's got the right equipment. He's got the right track knowledge. Everything about Toby is so poised, and he's bringing that level of professionalism. And I don't think anyone's sad about that, because honestly, everyone I talk to, other than saying that they had to beat him at night while he sleeps with a stick, other than that, everyone was very, like as in, I believe, I hope I'm not speaking for anyone, but everyone we talked to were essentially like, well, we're just going to have to step up. Not that it's a, it's unfair. It's not a competition. No one said that to us. Everyone was like, hey, he's pushing us. We're just going to have to work harder. We're going to get better machinery. We're going to do all this sort of stuff. So I think that it's going to be a very interesting thing that goes on, for a while, that we're essentially trying to, because again, I'll say it. I like Toby. He's an absolute legend, deserves all his accolades. Obviously, Australian hero. Like, let's just get that out. But if there was one advantage that he has over everyone, it is not the air-shifted TSCO truck. It is not the Dugan's Motor 8 stack. It is the track time. And that's what we're going to struggle time and time again as amateur racers, or, a bit where lots of us, like Bo's a little bit more than an amateur racer, but still doing a day job, as most people are. That's the thing that we're really going to have to step up to compete with, I believe, at this top level now. Because even, Josh, where does this lead us now that Toby's done so well? Do we see Walshy step into a professional team? Do we see Jack Simpson? Do we see these guys now that have got the bike? Because there is no question. Let's just throw it out there. If you have done your time on a bike and can run at the front, you are going to do very well once you've learnt the arts of a car. If you got into a fast pro buggy and you are a leading motorcycle, like even the Smith boys, like, Jacob did absolutely brilliantly this year, second outright, was smoking. This sounds so disrespectful because the Smith boys are complete legends, but who would have thought that he was going to prologue first? Killed it.
Not me.
Killed it. Yeah. So again, listen, got to say this, like, I always knew that he was going to be up the front long term, but he has historically been a guy that, qualifies top 10-ish and then runs through the pack.
Yes.
Not like led, that's super impressive. Him and Jack Simpson too, tied up with OBR now, running essentially a flash privateer team. And man, he did so well. So big shout out to those guys. Again, we're motorbike junkies. Like, we love the cars and we love the racing, but I tell you what, those motorbike guys, when they're flapping off the back, some of the footage, that's the next bit, Josh, where we're just running through this thing. But again, what I also saw this year was that the social media has stepped up so far. It's super impressive because people are releasing footage, people are releasing photos. There's so much going on almost instantaneously now. Amazing.
Yeah, that's right. You're able to sort of keep up at the rate, like at home, you could keep up with what was going on the race. Like we have talked about it on the channel, and we did talk about it on the podcast with Bo, was their YouTube, back from 2011, 2012 was, leaps and bounds ahead. And what they're starting to do now with social media and stuff like that, like the small videos and the reels that they're putting out almost instantly of prologue, of presentation and stuff like that. It's great. Hey, Toby Price with the Road to Finke, I watched that the other night sitting in camp. So that was, it was great. Even though I knew what had happened, it was still great to catch up. There's plenty of stuff going on the socials. But yeah, I think you're right. Like going back to the bike riders and talking about them making that change, I think you might be right in saying that, it hasn't happened for a while, but we did, it wasn't that a little while ago we had, hired guns for drive. There was Dave Fellows driving for the Kittle race team. And I think we may not be far away from seeing, someone, particularly once the 7-liter rule comes in, I think we might see some secondhand race cars come in from America and a guy like Walshy or Jacob Smith. Hey, and, Jack Simpson is tied up with OBR. There's now a Geyser truck, floating around that's not doing much at all. I don't mean that in any disrespectful way to the Geyser truck, but there's that, he's got his new Mason, and that's what he said he's going to race for the rest of the season. will they prep it? And will someone like, hey, imagine this, DC, like we talk about it. Imagine a race in the Ironman. Like, it wasn't that long ago that Billy proved that it was possible. And then this year there was three people competing in the Ironman?
Which was crazy.
So when we say the Ironman, we mean that they do it in a car, they helicopter back, get on a bike, ride down, stay overnight, car back to Alice in a helicopter or a plane, and then ride it back on a bike. So that's what we call the Ironman. And we were talking about it the other day. We said, are we going to see a class? Is Fink actually going to recognize this as something to actually do and have it as part of the category, where you combine your car and bike time for an overall Ironman?
Yeah, amazing. Because even down to who would have thought some of the crazy stories about that Ironman is Troy Daly, who hopefully you all saw on the live feed. Absolute legend, had a great run in many respects, but also had some difficulties. Who would have thought that the craziest bit about his whole race was the plane on the ground in Alice to take him back down after his car run for the second day essentially wasn't airworthy. I don't know the whole story behind it, but essentially somewhere along the lines it wouldn't start or something like that. And that means that the craziest part about his race, where he almost didn't finish, he had to jump in another plane that was going down for an Ironman attempt as well and go and run it back. So the hardest bit about his whole, I'm sure he won't agree with this, but the hardest bit about his weekend was trying to line up a second plane or an optional plane to get him back when things fell through. So it's a crazy game when it starts running like that. And again, there would be no question that it would haunt a number of guys, Toby no more than anyone else, that it is very possible for a very short time in his professional career that he is capable of doing a 1-and-1. Because right at the moment this year, and it's harder because I'm going to call a spade a spade. Again, I like Toes, but years are creeping on, and we've seen dominant champions that have lost their ability to be able to be true. Like, so this takes a sidestep to like the likes of Grabo. Like, how impressive was Ben Grabham this year? Like running his own team. We actually had Seaton Battle. We've been talking to him. Kent Battle's much better looking younger brother, much faster young. Have I let on enough here, Josh?
It's usually what the younger brothers are.
Oh, snap. I walked into that. Anyway, long story short is that Seaton actually rented one of Grabo's bikes and said it was the greatest experience ever. So, even that side of Fink now, like how crazy is it? And I know a lot of people shudder at a dollar cost, but if you truly look at it, Josh, and we know what it costs to go racing, what his prices are very fair and reasonable, in my opinion. If I was looking to go and ride it again with full support on a professional bike, why would you do anything else?
So yeah, very. Your head, you don't happen to know what the price is.
Well, I didn't want to. I didn't want to drop it in case I was really wrong. I heard somewhere in the $6,000 vicinity. So, and that it's hard because again, lots of people will be going, that's half a motorbike. But by the time you do stegs and steering dampener and suspension setup and slip-on pipe and fuel stops and Seaton Battle told me, again, I hope this is not secret information, but he didn't even stay because he's got a young one, and like some kids and that. He didn't even have to push his bike through the line for the full thing. He went to Scrutineer and had a great time, 8, 9 o'clock, whenever he wanted to, picked up his young fella and headed on off. And that was it. Game over. Grabo sorted everything. You literally just turn up, swing a leg over the bike and ride as fast as you're comfortable riding on a bike. And he said it was one of the best prepped Fink bikes. And this is Seaton. He's ridden a lot of bikes and done his own programs, done all sorts of things. So very interesting to hear him say that. So I think it'd be, if you're looking at having a real crack anywhere in that top 100, because that was the other conversation he had. He goes, Dan, a dry brake fuel system for a motorcycle, it was 18 seconds at his pit. Dry brake system for the IMS jug is $1,500 for the jug. He goes, so just buying 2 of them would put you over it. So he goes, like if you're going to have a crack, that's the one.
Yeah, Grabo's Trail and Track. I'm just having a bit of a look on their Facebook page.
Yep.
But so again, it looks pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yep. So, just the fact that that's available. And then again, we had that conversation in our Bo Robinson podcast that we did live at Fink on the black couch. That looked a bit sus, guys. But anyway, that was the moral.
Why did it look sus, Dan?
I don't know. We had plenty of comments about it. Let's say that. Anyway, the moral of the story, though, is that was our apartment, beautiful apartment in Alice Springs, nice and warm, and it was cool. Although, here you go, Josh. Here's another one. Unpopular opinion for not a lot of, the regulars, but I found it to be a beautiful thing. We had jeans and a hoodie on. There's been years where there has been ice on the swag. So whilst it was cool, it wasn't blowing its guts out, and there was no ice on the swag, So I thought it was very, yes, it was cool, 6 and 7s, but it was definitely not as cool as it has been. 2010 was a freezing year. 2011 was a freezing year. There's been some cold ones. So
2011 I had to wash Billy's truck. I don't know how I got conned into that, but it was
you got conned.
Freezing. Yeah, conned. It was freezing cold. Trust me, it was the coldest this young fella's ever been.
Yeah, so and I think the key there was that we didn't have the crazy breeze that we've had previously. I think that was a big change. So that's going to be very interesting to see how that goes. And anyway, it was a great podcast with Bo, but that was leading me to, as you mentioned, there is going to be some secondhand trucks floating around. And that's going to be interesting. I don't think we're talking about Bo Robinson there, Josh.
Bo, copy. Yeah. So sorry to interrupt, but we did just get a comment on the Facebook page, and I do want to just give a shout out to everyone that got involved in the petition and made it happen. It's not something Dan and I would have been able to do on our own, is get Bojangles back open.
Such an idiot, mate. They've been working through council petitions for years. Josh comes in for the cream at the end. Hey, mate, you know what we should do? Open Bojangles, righto, mate.
All I could think when I first seen that message that Bojangles had opened back up was in the best Conor McGregor voice. We did it, baby. Break out the red panties. You know what I mean? Like, Conor McGregor's made us rich.
It's going to be I tell you what, if it's open in 2023, how good is that going to be?
I think the whole CQ crew will be coming out.
Yeah. BT, Airsy. I like it. They'll have to be back. Well, there's one. They're talking about racing next year. Hopefully we see the LA 59 back. That'd be an absolute cracker. So, and actually there's rumors that he's talking about now nominating. I'm trying to peer pressure him into it, mate, but there's a rumor that a few of them are pretty interested now in doing the Don River, because, we did put a bit of effort in there to try to convince a few locals. Like, it's such a great crossover race. Like, it really is the Finke of North Queensland, isn't it? Like, it's the same, it's rough, sandy terrain. Man, lots of people have said that it's actually rougher because it's consistent.
Yes.
But
and it's sand, 100%.
Yeah, but the difference there is that it is a loop race. That changes the dynamics, but it's great for spectators and all that. But it's going to be very interesting to see who races for the rest of the year now. Because actually, funny you say that. So obviously, Ryan Taylor had an issue passing a car in dust, and he actually went out a little bit wide and took 2 tires off. Said that the tree that he hit was ginormous, so that must be pretty wild. But it bent a steering arm. Anyway, luckily finished it, salvaged points there, and then obviously got the car going and was on a stonker on the way home. Yeah, man, the day that boy puts it all together is going to be, it'll be great to see him, because he, more than anything, he deserves a podium position at Finke. They've been trying a lot of years. But again, see, this is where it's really hard with Finke, isn't it? There's a lot of people that have been trying for a lot of years. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that goes. So, but anyway, long story short is Ryan, was in this position where he's defending an Australian title, but Jay Swinglehurst had an absolute cracker of a run. Legend of a family. They're such good people, and it's great to see them having a run. And actually, mate, I'll say it as a proud Queenslander. How good is it at the moment? I know we're only like halfway into the season. There's a lot, but first and second, well, even third, because it's Brett Comiskey, isn't it?
Yes. Third is so is now the time we say suck at Warrnambool? No.
Well, it is, but that is the little SR33 is the car that, if he's listening, I'm telling you, they are all watching. They've all got the math sorted on it. It's never out of reach for Shaun Ranch. So it's going to be an interesting one, because even though he's in fourth with a bit of a points gap, there's still numbers that very much make it a possibility that he could take out the championship. comfortably. Because sorry, that's where I was going. I got a little bit sidetracked there with the Shannon chat, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. Maybe someone else can, comment below or give us some info. But I believe that Swinglehurst was never planning on coming to the 6th round. But I tell you what, if you're leading the Australian Championship, you're turning up to the 6th round, surely.
Well, I can give you the goss. So the plan was they were not going to race after Finke. So they have bought 2 cars, 2 Jimcos, obviously one Shannon and one the X Pinto machine as well.
So just so we're clear, so Josh, break it down for our listeners. The one that they're currently racing now is the both of these are going to be ex-Comiskey cars.
Ex-Comiskey cars, yes.
But the one that they're currently racing is the ex-Australian 1 car under Shannon Ranch.
Yes,
and
that's
then
right.
The second car is the ex-Pinto car that, am I on the right track? Did have the Honda NSX motor in it. It's now gone, and it's got a VQ35 as well, a Nissan turbo motor.
Yes.
So they're essentially 2 identical turbo Jimco Aussie spec race cars.
2 cars. Yeah, that's right. So that was the plan. They were the plan. They were actually going to use Shannon's car as essentially a template and copy a lot of things off that car. So the way the engine's mounted, the way the intercoolers are mounted, the way oil coolers are mounted, everything like that. So they were after Finke, they were essentially talking about parking up Jake's car and then essentially stripping it down, doing a bit of a prep and a rebuild on it, and then from there copying all of that over onto Tom's Jimco, and it makes a lot of sense for them, like a team racing. So then it's one intercooler, they don't have to carry 1 spare intercooler, 1 spare radiator, everything sort of match it. What goes on one car will fit on the other car. So brilliant idea from the guys, but now they've found themselves in the awkward position where they are currently leading the Australian Championship. So they've got to.
How impressive is that in itself, that they came out of, obviously how very fast in side-by-sides. No one's taken that away. And it's a great proving ground to step through that. But to be in front after 3 rounds of the Australian Championship in what is essentially your first season in a pro buggy.
Yeah, crazy.
That's crazy, mate. What a great, and it's a absolute tick on the box to those guys, no matter what they do and what happens from here. They should be proud of that effort. It's stonking. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, look, but it's sort of in the same position that Ryan was in as well. They went to St. George essentially because it was a race close to home. The car was prepped and ready to go. And they left St. George in 2nd position. So, hey, man, we got to go to Pooncarie. They were always going to Finke as well. But, hey, we got to go to Pooncarie because we're 2nd in the championship, and then had a great run there, won his first national race. For Team Taylor and everything like that, which was awesome. And then also took the lead of the Australian Championship as well. So they were always going to go to Finke. And, but essentially for them as well, what a silly time to actually go on a barnstorming run when there's 6 rounds of the Australian Championship. But great for them as well, because they are a family that just, lives and breathes and loves off-road racing. So, I mean, they're going to continue to turn that Tatum around. They got Foz on board prepping the car, and doing a great job of that car now. So, I think you'll continue to see Jake and you'll see Ryan at all the rest of the rounds. I think they will. I think they'll battle it out until the finish. Unfortunately for Howes, that's 2 DNFs in a row. So, not sure where that leaves them with what they're deciding to do for the rest of the year. Just throwing it out there. If you need somewhere to stop on your way to the Don River Dash, you Poon. It's a beautiful place. Hint, hint.
It is.
But yeah.
Bowen's pretty nice too.
Good prawn farms up there, I hear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the other key to that is that, Trent Martin, because sorry, mate, I know this is a bit of a jump as well, but I wanted to get to, as soon as you said Tatum, obviously Ryan's got an awesome Tatum, Luke's got an awesome Tatum, but the Tatum of Dale rocked into my mind, and then instantaneously I went straight to Brent. What a run from that man. He had it cranked up, and it was proper cranked up. Even on the way in to the stadium after he essentially locked down third, there was no question. He's still up on the berms, driving like a man possessed. Those Martins, and I mean, it's a family pedigree, isn't it? We talk about Craig with the Alpha and how fast he is, and Craig and his previous history. But, Dale is super fast, and obviously Brent's super fast as well. Now, Josh, you said you might have mentioned to me, is this inside goss or outside goss? Like, what's the story? Those guys, obviously Dale's moved his Tatum.
Yes.
So he's looking at doing something else and getting into is it pro buggy related?
Pro buggy, mate. Pro buggy.
Yeah.
So,
perfect.
yes, yeah. And
Which I think will be just a perfect position for those guys. Like, they're so fast. They will run at the front of the competition. They're running at the front of the competition now with 400 horsepower less than everyone else. That's what's crazy about it. Like, Dale's times this year at Finke. Now, obviously, let's prefix this with, Brent. Brent's times at
Trent Martin, V12 twin turbo.
Yes, correct. Times at Finke this year were like on previous year's history record runs. Like, it was a crazy year. If you guys are looking at the time, because Josh and I love analyzing all of this stuff, like, it wasn't so many years ago that if you ran a 2-hour time, you were winning the race outright. 2 hours, that was a win. And then nowadays, like, there was no one in the top 20 with a 2-hour run. Was it top 20 or top 10 that we're talking about? But either way, I think it was top 20, to be honest with you. They were all like 157s, 158. It's just nuts.
Side by side was in like 20. The first side by side was in 22nd or 23rd, and he essentially did 2-hour flat runs, which is
that's it. So insane. I've got to here, Josh. This is my public apology. I have a very true story about someone telling me a long time ago. I reckon it was 2012, maybe 2013, that a side-by-side would run Finke in 2 hours. I laughed at him. I said, there is no way that's going to happen. It cannot be real. Because at the time, again, I believe in 2012, Finke was won in a 2:04. So he was essentially suggesting that he would run that time as a winning, you know what I mean? And I was just like, nah, mate, you're in a Polaris 900. You got to be kidding me. Like, what are you doing? Oh, no, the long wheel bases are coming. Ooh, I'm so scared. Anyway, turns out that those things are fast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Particularly now with the plenty of horsepower. Some of the, I think the new XPR is talking about 230 horsepower. Like in a lightweight car. Those Can-Ams. I'm going to get held down for this, but I am. Yeah, it hurts to say. I'm actually genuinely excited to see the battle of throwing down between the new Polaris, the Pro R, and the Can-Am.
That's it. Yeah, you heard it here first, mate. Jimco's for sale. Side by side.
No, I think BT just texted me and kicked me out of a group. But I think it's great because essentially it for the last couple of years it has been, and I've probably said it before, but it has been, if you don't have a Can-Am, you're not expected to win. And I think it's great to see that we're getting back to that battle, that I think will just force Can-Am to step it up. And I think that goes back to what you were talking about. Man, we're going way back again here, but this is the joys. It's exactly what everyone's talking about with Toby. No one's slutting about Toby going, oh, it's unfair, or we need to slow him down, or reverse grid for the top 20 or something like that. Like, it's everyone else is standing around going, well, how the heck do we catch him? What do we do to get better? Yeah, that's what we've got to do. And man, like AJ, what an animal. Yeah, well, like AJ's got to be thinking, like, maybe I do invest a little bit of time and money into learning how this GPS thing works. Because what an animal, man. Single seat, like pro buggy, single seat, no GPS, no nothing, just eyes up driving, like just whatever's in front of him.
Was on the right track. He didn't even pre-run that much, just basically turned up a couple of days before the event.
Yeah, coffee. No, that's exactly
Cordic. Right. Here we go, buddy.
I think, yeah, that's right. I don't think he did much pre-running. He just turned up a couple of days before the event, and he slayed it, man. Like
it's interesting. So you've gone down a path there, Josh. I think something that needs to be brought up, because we have had conversations with, GPS, pro and against, but man, Heath Lawson ran us through on a little bit of information about that new system that they're running, or it's not new, but they've recently been allowed to run it. And the fact that it's GPS logged and coming up to the corner and the speeds, and you can do a lot of stuff with it. And it actually goes Bluetooth through your audio in your car. So for someone like AJ, that will be a huge step forward for him to be able to, one, run a huge screen, like an iPad style screen, which you could get a big sucker. And two, the fact that he doesn't even have to look at that because it's now talking to him as he's racing. Like, that could be something, like, if I was a single seat guy, that is something that I would absolutely be investing in. Like, you know, again, we've sort of talked about it and whether it's pro or, but the the negatives are never surrounding the fact that it helps you with your speed. It's going to be that you have the potential to run through the dust very fast, which is definitely a concern. If you know that the corner is still 500 meters straight and you're in dust and you run at 160 through that dust, again, it has always come down to our conversation about, what if someone is stopped in that dust? What if someone is limping? And, you know, if you only drive what you can see, it's good. And it was interesting, Josh, the other one, I keep referring, mate, I cannot stress, and I've always liked Bo, but the fact, I enjoyed that podcast we did with him so much. He had very good information. Like, it was even interesting because, let's call a spade a spade. They've always been on the upper echelon of high performance equipment. They've always had great equipment, but for him to have said to us, oh, it'd be better if they just, like, you know, like, once everyone has it and everyone needs it. Like, he goes, I'd be happy to just step back to 2-wheel drive trophy trucks. And, you know, like, that was a very interesting conversation from a guy that, you know, can often lead the technology charge, isn't it?
Yeah, DC dropped out for a little bit. Sorry, mate, you dropped out for a little bit there. The young fella must be doing too much research or something like that. You dropped out, but you were saying it's very interesting insight about Bo. You know, one of the things we asked Bo is, Bo's got a brand new Mason trophy truck, and it's a 2-wheel drive. And we did talk about the 4-wheel drive. Is it something he's going to step up to, or what his thought is particularly on it? And he was saying that, you know, it's just a bit kind of keeping up with the Joneses. Like, once one good driver gets it, then that's what everyone's got to do. And you know, obviously they've looked into a 4-wheel drive. I think they are maybe building one that they're going to leave in the States, but he was talking about how much maintenance and everything, because they got a full rundown from Mason about the good man, Zico. Thanks for tuning in. But the maintenance that needs to happen on it. He sort of said that, you know, it is going to be just keeping up with the Joneses, and they're sort of going to get to the point where maybe he thinks they'll wish that it's not something that they did, because once everyone's got it, you've just got to make sure that that's where you're at. So, it was very interesting. I think Bo had some, you know, I think like, you think about Bo as that baby-faced young fella that was getting around, you know, pre-beard, you know, racing turbo pro buggies. But I mean, the Robinsons have been in the sport for so long. I think they have some really great insight into, you know, he understood the plight of, you know, the fact that Finke has to not only please the pro buggies and the trophy trucks, but they got to please the bike riders, and not just the professional bike riders. Like, I guess you could say that, you know, well over half of the field, or probably 3/4 of the field is, you know, bucket list riders that are ticking it off. And one of the interesting ones that he brought up as well is that be interesting to know how many people return from ride. You know, they ride it once and they get their spike, and then they're done, and they move on. So he can understand why, you know, this year the Finke or the whoops in prologue were graded out. I mean, they did start to form a little bit by the end of prologue and stuff like that, and the track definitely did get rougher. People were saying over the weekend, but they did. It was a smoother year than what it has been for a while, and it was a little bit of a perfect cycle, or perfect storm, with 2012 being cancelled and 2011 being smaller fields. Sorry, I did get the information. It was Victoria and WA that were locked out. So with those two states locked out, it kind of was a bit of a perfect storm for this year being a fast year.
Yeah, absolutely. No, very interesting, mate. And even the road changes, like, they often have to put a new bit of track in. They've pushed it away from the service road for a number of reasons, but that always creates a bit of carnage, doesn't it? Because it goes that real bull dusty country if it hasn't had a couple of years of racing on it. It's like, doesn't compact properly. So anytime that they run a blade through, like, Josh, you'd remember that Redinga to you know, wherever it was, that 30 or 40 kilometers when in 2010 they first made it so that you weren't using the road through there. And when they graded through there, it was basically like hub deep on a dirt bike bull dust where you're just hitting rocks and tree roots and everything under the ground. It was wild. Well, I heard many
It was that
accounts of
white,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, many
It was like
accounts of
riding
that
through
again.
talcum powder, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's going to be interesting because again, I think that track's going to, thicken up in the next couple of years, and probably we'll see that track really stabilize and become quite, rolly and fast. And like you said, they've always got to do some sort of track maintenance to it because otherwise it does become quite unmanageable. It's pretty wild. So yeah, but it's exciting. There's no question about that. And Fink's not going anywhere. Now, out of interest though, Josh, and I know this happens every year, so I'm not trying to hype it up. It's just because we've got some sort of platform, but there's always talks. And we can probably give you a little insight that it was higher up than just like people in the paddock talking about it, about that at some point Fink may change, or they are at least looking at the opportunity to change. Because I don't know how many times I heard people talking about the cars again. Like even Toby at the finish line said, "Oh, she's good. Let's send it again." For us, it is a 2-hour sprint, less than now, 1 hour 30 in the race car, and then 1 hour 30 the next day home. What would stop us, Josh, racing on like, say, the Saturday? I know they'd have to prologue on like the Friday or something like that, but make it I know it's a big weekend, but it would gap the motorbikes and the cars away from each other. Even if the motorbikes ran first so that the track wasn't completely destroyed by cars. And then on Monday, we ran the cars down and back in one day or something like that. Because honestly, all of those cars are capable now. If we left at 7:30, like we do, we could run down, have a service time, park for May, turn around and run them home at 2:00 and all be at the casino partying on Monday night, couldn't we?
I like it. I like it.
I love it. I think
it's a good idea. Like, I mean, it is what was it?
I feel like it gives the motorbike guys a better hours. Like,
yes.
Now they can leave at 10 and run 2, because you guys got to understand out there, like some of this. I almost said stragglers. That's unfair because honestly, that's me these days. Like, but like say some of the guys that are cutting 4 hours, if you're starting at 12:30, it's 4:30 now. And these guys are coming in and ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you've noticed, she's pretty dark out there. It's starting to get, cold and tough, and the sun's down, and, there's long shadows. Like if those guys started at 10, like say the fast motorbikes were off the line at 9, even 8:30, we've got the sun up in the sky, because that's another interesting aspect of racing. And, I don't know, man, there's lots of options. That's for sure. So I think that we could absolutely run there and back in one day for the cars. And I think what would be so great about that, I know that the attrition rate would probably hurt even more.
Yep.
But I feel like it would take away some of this like craziness of pace. Then you're down there at 9:00 and you can put a new gearbox, a new, we've heard many stories of people basically replacing everything around, a short block. They've changed turbos, they've changed gearboxes, they've changed turbos. It's clearly a turbo pro buggy I'm talking about. But anyway, the moral of the story is that those situations have happened.
Yep.
And it's interesting because, like, again, I don't believe you'd be in a position to do that if we had a Parc Fermé type situation like we do at, say, Gundy or St. George or any of those races. Because it's interesting that Fink doesn't do that type of thing. Even if they didn't want to change that situation, it would be interesting if they turned around and said, okay, well, from the time you get in, you've got, like even if it's a 3-hour window in a Parc Fermé type situation, because even if you thought the logistics were too hard to get your crew down to the other end in time, they might not turn up until 12:00 because they've had to drop the car off. Fine, let's work with that. But there's got to be options around it to make it so that we can have, an hour and a half check over Parc Fermé. You can't touch the car, visual only, and then all of a sudden you go to work.
Yep. So what he's saying, maybe something like it gets parked in a holding area.
Yep.
Yep. So you're right. So if you don't have a team that is has to run down the service road, or you don't have 20 blokes and you can't have 10 and 10 at each end. You park in like a Parc Fermé area, and then you're allowed to designate a time to check your car out, I guess, and say, hey, we're taking it 2 hours, and then you've got to return it in an hour and a half, or 2 hours, or 3 hours. Like, let's pick a number. So then what happens then, Dan? What are we saying? any time over that time, is it an instant disqualification, or say you're 4 minutes late? Yep, 4 minutes late. That 4 minutes is added onto your race time. So you could make a call and go, hey, I do need to fix this. Like, say, I need an extra 4 minutes to just finish zip tying this up, or and it's
and
what's
that's going to
get me home.
That's going to save me 10 minutes in the race or 15 minutes in the race. I mean, even down to Josh, we've seen people, at I believe it was Gundy, I think from memory, or it might have been St. George, but where they rushed out of the pit, pulled over, did a little bit more work that they realized they had to do out of Parc Fermé, and then keep going. Like that. That's an option too. You could. I mean, this is tough. I'm now telling secrets, but if there happened to be some stuff on the side of the road about 10K out or something, well, I mean, we've seen that before where it's completely legal. It was just convenient. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Dave, fellas.
Just wandered around. So then, here you go. We'll really throw it out. So then what happens there, Dan? Does your race time get added onto your, say, your time from Sunday? So you run down. If you're 4 minutes late, that gets started on your time, and then you get reseeded into the pack. So say,
that's exactly how it works at all the other Australian races. Hey, if you're late into Parc Fermé,
I'm not 100% sure.
So my dummy, I've been 4 minutes late back at Gundawindi, and that meant that I started that 4 minutes down on time, corrected time. So it's essentially put on your section 1 time, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So if you're now 2 hours and you ran a 140, you now are as if you ran 2 hours.
Yep, and you'd be reseeded into the pack. So you wouldn't say be second or third off the line, you'd drop down to 20th.
And I guess that's the key, because you don't want to let's say you don't want to have
that road position.
Well, exactly. Well, but more importantly, you don't want Josh Howes to cross the line or Toby to cross the line first, then have 38 minutes from Parc Fermé added to him and go, oh no, the real winner is the third car down the line.
Yes.
Because we always, and that's what Fink's done so well, is if you take the checkered flag, you are the winner. That's for the cars and the bikes. I think that's something that they've completely nailed there with that on-road time, because it has always, I mean, you look at and I'm not knocking at it, but all the scores and all the mints and all the other races, they cross the line and then they're like, hold on, unofficial, we now got to wait for corrected times. And it might be a couple of, while until,
before you hear
everyone's through.
Yeah, it sucks the atmosphere out of it. So Fink have done an excellent job there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, no, man, I think it'll be interesting. Anyway, I didn't want to get bogged down in the politics, but obviously that's something that interests at least a few of the people on our channel with respect to running it, because I've definitely heard it many, many times that lots of people would love to run it down. We were part of this back in the old LS days. Like, we said it was amazing. Like, we just run down, fuel the back up, and run a home most years. And we were in a position, obviously, if you've got the extra time, you end up spending a lot of time looking at things and tightening bolts and doing all the stuff. But yeah, if you've got the opportunity to do that and have that time, it'd be pretty good, I reckon. So there you go. Well, yeah, no, I don't want to make too many rules, because the other great rule there would be, imagine if you had to designate a maximum of 6 people too.
Oof,
takes a little bit of the dollars out of it, because you can't turn up with a 30-car supercar team. Not that I'm suggesting anyone is, but you can't turn up with a 30-person factory style team.
Yep.
You've got 6 designated wristband guys. They work on the car, and that cleans it up a little bit too. Because I feel like 2-3 people plus your driver and navigator are sort of limiting it a fair bit. Like, a 6-person team is a pretty reasonable sort of team, I think. Like, most people, lots of us are running 3-4 team. Lots of them are running, 6. But, again, once you get to that 30 or something, or 20 or something like that, it's a bit silly. But that might be something that's, becomes evident if it's not put in as a rule.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, look, that's the great thing about motorsport. People are always trying to find a little bit of a loophole to get around the room and around the rules, and find the best advantage that they can. But yeah, I think there's so many interesting possibilities of things that they could do with Fink. Like,
well, here you go, Josh.
No,
well, I was going to say, looking through Cornick. Now, that is an interesting one that Stuff It, I'm bringing up as well. Capacity checks. That is an interesting conversation, because despite the rumors every year, there was rumors this year, there was rumors the other year, there was rumors
when
at what
hasn't
race?
there, well, when hasn't there been rumors?
Yeah, but there was clearly, just thrown out there, as far as I understand, not one person got capacity checked this year. So is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Should we be doing random capacity checks? Like, I mean, it back in the day, like in off-road, I think it was off-road racing, but particularly like all sorts of road racing, like essentially the top 3 would get checked, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
just
absolutely.
so we're clear, I don't have a horse in this fight. Like, there's no dog. I don't think anyone's doing the wrong thing. That I want to prefix it with this. But I must admit, as soon as nothing was done again this year, I essentially knew that there'd be at least conversation about it again. There will always be conversation when there's a huge unknown like there is. Because here you go. Again, we'll throw it out there. Ladies and gentlemen, hand on heart, for every reason that it was a 400 horsepower LS1, 5.7, yeah. Someone came up to us, and there's no beef about it, and went 5.7. We're like, no, it's a 5.7. Like, we've measured the bore and stroke. It's stock bore. It's got stock pistons in the thing. I'm telling you, we've physically had the motor apart. It is a stock 5.7. They're like, yeah, stock 5.7. So how much does that happen? Where people are like, oh, yeah, old mate's doing that, so it can't be, oh, that motor sounds different, so it can't be like, there's a lot of variables, any of this sort of stuff, isn't there? So I think it'd be very interesting to have it where they knew that there was going to be random checks. Like, there's got to be an easy way to do it. Like we do it in all other forms of motorsport, and that would clarify whether we're all on the same playing field or not too, just with respect to that, because there is a lot of talk, there's guys that are holding out cars for 7 liters. There's guys that are holding out for other things going on. And, how much of a difference is it going to make? Is it a big deal? Is it? I don't know. Like, are these guys running man, I'm throwing out lots of variables today, aren't I? Have the V8 boys shot themselves in the foot again? Because in the last 2 years, in the fastest race in Australia, V8 6 liters have won both years. So again, I got to say, I'm all for letting them run. I'd go with a fully unlimited. So that's my position on it, because I just think it's a great way to go. I can put a 512 cube Chevy big block if that's what I want to do. I just enjoy the fact that I can build anything. That's all it's about. But within the confines of the rule, there is not a parity issue at the moment by the looks of it.
No, I mean, they are winning.
The fastest car on track right now is a V8, 6 liter.
Yeah, that's right. Closely followed by a twin turbo V6, closely followed by a naturally aspirated V6. So this constant conversation about, we need it so that we can keep up. That's interesting. And then the other one that has clearly been blown out of the water time and time again is we've got to stop getting down a dollar conversation. Surely, Josh. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, that how they the opinion with the 7 liter argument was, we want to do it to save money. I don't think it's an effective argument. Like, no. if Bo Robinson has 100 grand in his motor budget, he's spending 100 grand on his motor budget. He's not knocking it back to 65 to, now that I've got a 7 liter, I only need 65 to make 800 horsepower. Well, it's going to be, I'm going to spend 100 grand and get 950 horsepower. Yeah, that's right. I just think, and then there's all that other thing, like, okay, now I only got to spend 20 grand or 30 grand or 40 grand to get 800 horsepower, but now you've got to make sure your gearbox can handle it. You've got to make sure your diff can handle it. So there's added cost there. Like, yeah, I think when the cost argument got used, I think it just got a few people offside. Like, it just didn't seem like a valid argument when we're talking about $500,000 US, $750,000 US trophy trucks, $300,000 pro buggies, and then we're talking about, the motors are tad too expensive. When, I guess the statement could be, if we're worried about cost, well, it's no Albans, it's no turbo 400s, it's no, we go back to Renault gearboxes in the buggies, and we go back to 5-speed, T56s or something, like,
imagine
yeah,
that.
no, stuff that. No, and we get rid of
Yeah.
torque converters and we put clutches back in the car, because that's a cheaper option and it'll make it fairer as well. So,
It's
I don't think
not better.
cost.
It's not better
No,
from a prep lifestyle view.
No, I think cost is never an effective argument in motorsport, and I know it probably sucks for. Hey, man, we're a small team. We run on a pretty short budget, but I don't think you can ever use cost as an option as to why you should be able to increase a capacity limit. I'm with you, Dan. I think it should be done simply for the fact that it'll make a heap of American cars available.
Yeah,
which
great
will then,
reason.
Yep. Which will then, people will sell. They'll get them here. They'll bring them over. We'll have more races, which then means the clubs are getting more competitors at their events, which is more money for the clubs to put on a better event. So exactly why I reckon they should get exactly like Mikey Zaka brought up, a beam front end class, and whether it just be like 2 horsepower categories and that's it. And, get these old cars out and racing, because that's how we're going to make racing. A 7-liter rule isn't going to all of a sudden add 50 cars to every event.
No, it doesn't really achieve what they wanted it to do, which is American cars.
Yeah, and I reckon that's the big. So it should exactly right. It doesn't achieve all American cars, or it doesn't achieve the big dogs of American cars, coming over. Whereas it does make some secondhand cars available, but that's always the question. Like, probably getting back to what you're talking about with capacity checks. So the backstory behind why we got the question about it being a 5.7 is the Jimco was originally, it's left-hand drive. It was built in America. It was raced in America. So with their unlimited rules, like they've had unlimited engine capacities for a long time, it just seemed hard to believe that it would run a 5.7 liter. But look,
especially,
the other
I was going to say, stroker cranks are like $1,600. Why wouldn't you?
Well, that's an interesting point that comes up with the capacity testing as well, and the limitation to 6 liter. A wise man, I'm going to call him Mr. X. So I think you know who I'm talking about. But he made the statement, and he said, what about some of these people that they might be getting once again, not saying anyone is, but they might be getting gypped by their engine builder. You're talking to someone and they say, hey, we've got a 6 liter capacity rule in our sport, but we really need like 800 horsepower, but I can't afford it. And old mate goes, hey, I can do that for you for, 3/4 of the price, because I'm a better engine builder than old mate you were talking to. And hey, they just put a stroker crank in it. You know nothing of it. So you're not mechanically, you just race cars. You're a cattle farmer or something. Bad example, because bad example. We know they don't have money. No, I'm kidding. But hey, so you're like, you got a great cabinet making business. You used to ride motorbikes. You got into
I don't know.
racing.
So this is a dangerous statement, Josh. Because
100%.
So are you suggesting that neglect is possibly a reason that someone's running? Okay.
No. But I'm just saying it is a possibility that it could happen. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not saying it's a valid excuse.
I think you'd have to know. Yeah, like no, not as in you'd have to know, but I think that as the driver and the race team owner, the onus will be squarely on you, because, okay, I'll throw it out there. You imagine if someone in the top whatever, honestly, was proven to be a cheat at, say, Finke or Gundy or Don. Like, that's a pretty big call. Do you think it'd affect the sport negatively? Or would everyone just go, oh, we sort of knew that was going on, or, we sort of, he was just building within his limit. How do you reckon that plays out?
Yeah, I don't.
I'm throwing you on the spot, aren't I?
Yeah, 100%. I don't have the answers, but I guess what I'm saying is, I mean, hey, there are people out there that are not that mechanically minded that are racing cars. Like some people just are really good drivers, but know nothing about how the car works, but you just put them in it and away they go. I'm not saying that it's right, or I'm not saying it's happened or anything like that, but, and I'm not saying it's a reason to open up the unlimited class rule. I just think it's a possibility. You know what I mean? Like, and imagine.
I suppose It's a possibility, but I just look at it like you couldn't as the team owner of F1 go, oh, I didn't know. You know what I mean? And like if we're going to be professional in our sport and bring off-road racing to the masses, which I know is tough, we need to be at least aware of this, and we need to make sure that we're not breeding complacency within our competitors.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. No, I listen, I hear what you're saying. It's just an interesting side note. Like, yeah, I don't know how you stop that. But I also think that at the end of the day, if you stood there at the end, say you win, Josh, and I know you don't know how to measure a ball, so throw
this conversation boring me. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Thanks to all the people that are tuning in.
So the moral of the story is that if John Curran gave you a motor and then you won Fink, which again will never happen, old mate. But anyway, maybe if they gave it to me, and me and BT. But anyway, long story short is, you stand on the podium, your car gets checked. Like, you're not going to be able to go, oh, I didn't know.
Well, no. I guess what I'm circling around to is exactly like you said. If you knew you were going to get capacity checked at some point in time, you would probably be a bit more on the ball. I think we're breeding complacency by there being no capacity checks whatsoever.
Like so you're saying that an engine builder potentially goes, oh, when's the last time they checked? Never. We've never been checked. No, I don't know. Has anyone actually ever been checked?
Yeah, surely if you are listening in, if you are listening in, drop us a comment and let us know if you have been checked. It's not something that has ever happened to us. I don't know of it happening to anyone either.
And again, we hear about it at almost every second race. Someone says, oh, there's going to be a capacity check at the end. It was absolutely circling this year that was going to happen. And we heard about it in the commentary box, and then nothing happened. No. So that's interesting, hey?
Yeah, and also, if you're slightly more mechanical minded or more in the loop than Danny Curran and I, is there an easy way to be able to capacity check, or is it, do engines have to be pulled down? Because I guess that's where it becomes hard. If engines have to be pulled down to capacity check, then it does obviously come at a large cost and, a big issue because, hey, look at Toby Price's motor this year, good on Dugan's. The word on the street is that they actually warranted that motor from last year because it was a brand new motor. So, hey, shout out to Ray. What an absolute legend of off-road racing. Yeah. So, like, if they turned around and Cam said, hey, Motorsport Australia, my bad. If they turned around and said, hey, we're going to get old, Joe Bloggs down in the back blocks of Victoria to pull your motor apart. Well, if I was Toby Price, I know exactly what I'd be saying. Like, absolutely not. No way. So, Mick Marson, would Mick let anyone pull his motor? I mean, and good luck if you're trying to make Mick, pull his motor, let someone else pull his motor down, I don't think it's, if it's something that can be done quick and easy, maybe there's a way they do it in V8 supercars or Formula One relatively easily or something like that. I'm sure there's probably something, that maybe measures capacity that comes out of the, as you crank it over or something like that. Yep. There may be an option, but I think it's something that, and not just 1, 2, and 3. Like maybe maybe you get to the finish line, and if you're in the top 20, you much like random drug testing at a mine site, you draw them, and hey, they might get no one. You draw a marble out, and if it's say 9 white ones and 1 yellow one, and if you get the yellow one, you get capacity tested. Yep. And at top 20, they may get no one, but they might get 5 cars, you know what I mean? And that way you could say that it is 100% random, without bias or anything like that. If you're in the top 20, there's a possibility you're going to get capacity tested.
Yeah. Well, here you go. Let's change the subject, Josh, because I was going to say we're sounding like sad sacks. I want to say first up. No. Well, I'm not being funny. I don't know anyone that is cheating. That's a true and honest statement. So I'm not trying to, this conversation wasn't surrounding, it was just surrounding that every year this conversation comes up. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it would clear up a lot of rumors. It would even the playing field. It would do lots of things. But again, I can't stress this enough. Absolutely zero thought process to me thinking that anyone is doing the wrong thing. Because again, I must say, I think because this is where I was going to, don't think Toby Price is cheating. That's my first statement, because you imagine the impact that could potentially have on him if they turn around and go, oh yeah, he's got the wrong motor in it. And everyone goes, oh, well, of course he's been winning. No, I believe he's winning with all the same gear that everyone else has because of his track time and his knowledge and his speed. So I guess that's what I'm saying to you is that I think it'd be great to see that sort of thing. So it'd be very interesting to see. So look at Cornick. Cornick's all over this stuff today. Thanks, Alan Cornick. We might have to have you on as a tech time one time, but there's a tool. So there you go.
Yeah.
And this
a tech tool?
A tech tool. Cornick is a tech tool. No, it makes sense because again, they must capacity check rally and they must capacity check F1 and they must it's got to be a reasonably simple sort of process to be able to do this. So be interesting. But anyway, what I wanted to get to now, guys, and hey, if you're in our comments again, throw it out there and start chatting and put in. But I want to know, Josh, what was your absolute highlight of Finke for you? I'll start because I reckon, I loved the commentary. Obviously, that was an absolute cracker. But this is really weird because obviously the race as a whole, I loved everything. But what I really loved was getting out in the desert again. We went, out. We camped a couple of days on the road. We went home via the Plenty and slept sort of in the hills of Boulia and had a big Gidgee fire and just that whole atmosphere was so good. And it was time with the family. And I think that's one of the things that this race just brings that no other race brings at this point. I'm sure more and more will get onto it, but that family aspect, I had my little 7-year-old in the desert. It was just such a great time. And man, every time I go to that race, that's the thing that keeps drawing me back to Finke. And I've said it to so many people is that the event as a whole, the race is a small portion of it. The going down the track on Thursday, looking for spots, the Friday, Thursday night, cruise around talking to the method boys at the booth, just the fun of it, the backflips on the main street from those crazy crackers on those quad bikes. You know what I mean? It was so insane. And then, then we had all the other stuff that was going on, the race, and it was so good. Everyone is so friendly out there. Man, even say the Brantfords, Kelsey and and Ryan were out there, and the smile is infectious, isn't it? You can tell they're under the bus. Yoff pulled up and had a chat to us for a little bit just about random stuff. And, these guys, they've done 11 months of work to get here, really, haven't they? And, again, the race is amazing. Let me clarify that. But, man, the time as a whole was a highlight. But I must admit, Josh, I was a little bit more, not trying to throw shots or anything. I was a little bit more in the commentary box. You actually got the opportunity to go down the track to some really great locations and do some filming with Method.
Yep.
Did you saw some amazing stuff? You had a hoot.
Yeah. I sort of to jump on your coattails a little bit there. I think it was that for me as well. I was so hyped leading up to leaving home. It was like Christmas again, packing the car, JC Senior on the road trip. It was, I think it's tough to narrow it down to one thing that you love about Finke, but it's that whole atmosphere. We got to catch up with Billy. We got to catch up with, hey, I want to give these guys a mad shout out. I think they were the only people that worked way to pump our own tires up. I think they were the only people that worked longer than the commentary team was the photographers. So those guys did an awesome job. So we got to catch up with Steve, Mick, Randall, those guys. Like I said, Billy was there, the Swindlehurst, the Taylors. I think it's like you said, everything that goes with that race that is super enjoyable. Everyone's in Alice Springs. It's
well, even Josh,
everyone's there for the one reason. Yep.
I was going to say that you talking about that almost made me just think real quickly too. It's the community too. Mick Taylor from Race Wheels found out that we were having some commentary data issue down the far end at Apatula, which is very standard. Apatula is super remote in the middle of nowhere, desert country, proper. And, instantly jumped on and said, hey, we've got a satellite dish, which again, you probably saw on the live feed if you've watched the Finke live feed, but essentially just donated it so that we could do those interviews and do all that stuff down the far end. And
even so we could bring the pictures.
pictures. Yeah. So like all that stuff that you guys saw streaming on the YouTube live feed from Fink was actually via a secondhand. Like we just happened to get a message from Mick saying we were having dramas with the live feed. And he's like, I'll sort it out. You know, gets onto the tech guys in the commentary tower, makes it happen. And I think that's what's so cool is that was actually put him in a position where it was a bit painful for him. You know, like he had cars to prep, he had places to be, he had his own data to do with Method and the Race Wheels Australia guys. But just again, how cool is it that a guy like that just jumps on board and like, hey man, we love this race so much. Whatever you need to do, let's make it happen. And then the other cool thing, Josh, sorry, mate, I've totally sidetracked you. The more I think about Fink,
I'm used to it, mate.
I know. Everyone loves this race, but even the messages over the weekend, like Lee Wells was texting us nonstop with updates and bits and pieces and information. And, you know, like it was so good to have all the Facebook messages and that and the guys and obviously getting all the guys very, very hammered on the bopper, you know, those guys drinking. Yeah, keep going, mate. Keep going. So, yeah, poor old Dave Polino's still in hospital.
Yeah, hasn't recovered.
Recovered from it.
But yeah, that's right. Like at his own detriment, Mick gave up his satellite. So they had a satellite on the back of their chase vehicle so that they could quickly upload some of the media that they had to do for Method Race Wheels, as they were one of the major sponsors. You know, so that sort of impacted what he was doing, but he happily gave it up to be able to make sure that everyone at home. So essentially, if you're at home looking for bike 627, you know, and it was going to be in at 3:00, like you were able to see that thanks to, you know, the Race Wheels Australia team. So, you know, absolute credit to those guys. But getting back to your original question about, I was down the track. So like I said, I was in between the Off-Road Club and the Tree of Knowledge. I went down there and took Jaden, one of the guys that was doing some filming for Race Wheels Australia. And it was, mate, it was super interesting to be there. You could see, we were in a section that was quite hilly and whooped out. Like it's pretty iconic footage of Fink there. You know, those that have been out will know the section I'm talking about near the Off-Road Club. But probably the most interesting thing was like you could almost pick there at the 40K, like who was going to make it and who wasn't going to make it. So one of my early picks for the weekend was Glenn Owen, thinking that, you know, parachuted in, no fight in the championship. A previous winner knows what it takes to win. And when he come past us, you could smell that thing was definitely burning some oil. So we were pretty confident he wasn't going to make it. But probably the super interesting one for me, the highlight or the thing that'll stick with me is how close the bikes were when they came past us. Like Jacob Smith. Not Jake. Jacob Smith and Dobby were all so close when they came past us. And then sort of, you know, hearing that had gone on for a while. So
Dobby being Walshy, just ladies and gentlemen.
My bad. Yeah. Not that I know that well, but yeah. But yeah, like it was interesting because once we'd sort of filmed the cars and some of the top bikes, I did make the trek back into the commentary booth to actually earn my keep for a little bit. But you heard, I got to hear some of the finish line interviews secondhand, and Walshy was talking about how he didn't know what was going on. He was he thought he was catching a car or someone on the service road, but Jack and Jacob were actually that close, and when they come past us, they were essentially side by side. I'd say maybe 3 to 4 seconds splitting them, and then probably 20 seconds Walshy was behind them. So you knew that Walshy had made up time on them. It was just whether he was going to be able to put the pass on him with the dust and the speed and everything like that. But to hear Walshy then get down to the finish line and talk about how he thought he was catching a car and to actually be able to sort of, you know, because of the way the dust was from the two bikes, it was very unusual the way that the two bikes side by side were making dust and not something that he'd ever experienced before. So it was pretty interesting to sort of witness that out on the track and then listen to Walshy, you know, talk about what he had experienced on the, you know, as he was trying to make up that time on Jack and Jacob.
Now, interestingly, this gives me a little bit of because obviously there's some talk about Walshy retiring at the end of the year, or sorry, after this one. Did you hear that at the finish?
No.
He just mentioned that he, you know, well, someone mentioned about it. I questioned him because I think he did talk about retiring last year, and you know, like now he's got 3 in a row, and you know, obviously he's got family commitments, life commitments. Yeah, perfect way to go, really. But either one, he comes back and races it again because the addiction's too good, which I can totally get, or it'll be interesting because, you know, we've had a 3-time champ. That might open it up a little bit, you know what I mean, with the bikes as well. Not that he's unbeatable in any way, shape, or form, in the sense that there's a lot of fast guys there that are working and training and that, but it'll just be interesting because I was interested in where your predictions for next year go, because I think there's a few things that are going to be pretty interesting next year. One thing that I think, and this is I'm really throwing it left here, but one thing that I think is going to be crazy next year is, here you go, Josh, Starlink. Starlink's going to be the game changer next year. It's going to be very interesting to see what.
You're saying it's going to be the new 79.
Oh, yeah, I can't believe I said that. Sorry, I apologize for that wording, but I do think it's going to be very interesting. We talked about it on, you know, again, the live commentary that the Baja 500 has been streamed from a car. And, you know, as of whenever, is that going to be the new hotness? Is everyone going to have car in cab? You know, there's going to be guys down live feeding. There's going to be all sorts of stuff going on, because I think that's going to be an interesting thing. Now, we know, I hope I'm not giving away any secrets here, Josh. We know it didn't work this year because our Starlink didn't work. So
go for it. What secrets?
So we know all about it. Like, we couldn't do.
Yeah, that's right.
So, you know, but what's going to be interesting is to see where that technology takes us. And even down to now, I mean, look at us. We can do whatever the heck we want, whenever we want on YouTube Live and that. Like, is it going to be a situation where we've got all sorts of streams and all sorts of action going on all over the place? It's going to be interesting, because, again, I can't stress this enough. 10 years ago, checkpoint times were the best update you were possibly hoping to get, and you could potentially listen live to none other than Rusty and Jody in those days.
The goats.
Absolutely, on the live stream, and you could listen to it. Like, you know, when we were racing, Mum was sitting at home in Yeppoon watching checkpoint times. She knew more information than anyone on site ever did. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see where that takes us, because I think that, yeah, again, I don't know. As of the current situation, it is extremely remote, and you have to understand that. 10 Ks out of Alice Springs, like pretty much where we were in the commentary box, unless you're hooked to a data line, there was next to no phone reception. Anywhere south of that is, you know, and we're talking 226 Ks down the road to the south, and you know, for our American friends, that's like 160 miles out in the desert, somewhere like that. I'm guessing this miles, because who the hell uses the imperial system? But anyway, it's down in the middle of nowhere is what I'm trying to say to you. And that makes it interesting, doesn't it? Because, you know, like, once we get true satellite data, that makes it a very interesting space to be in next year.
Yeah, I think so. Like you said, they broadcast a whole race from Mexico, like a whole in-car. So you could essentially, like, and I think it's a great system that will work great in, you know, you no longer have to hire a sat phone. You no longer have to do this. Like, you can get to the overnight stop at Apachula. You can set up your Starlink. You can, or in, you know, Mickey Taylor's case,
listen to a couple of DIRTBAGZ podcasts.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Well, in Mickey Taylor's case, you know, they've got it now with their own satellite uplink. So not even using Starlink. I'm not even sure who it's through, but, you know, Mick was able to text us and was able to get a bit of information out. Actually, I believe I don't, you know, we used it on Monday as the cars came home. They ended up 40 Ks down the track and got a Instagram live video going on the Race Wheels Australia Instagram. So, and man, we had it going up in the commentary box, using it as information as well. So, I think information is going to be, you know, for races like Finke, is going to come through thick and fast. And it's only going to be great because there's going to be so much content to consume leading up to Finke and stuff like that. And heck, you know, like, I believe from some of our conversations with Kelsey, they're looking at ways that they can improve the live feed as well. You know, more information, a few more cameras, a few more, you know, down the track and stuff like that. So off-road racing, you know, like you said, like, we need to get it to the masses, and how can we do that? And I think, you know, the internet is going to be a huge part of that. And I think Starlink, satellite links, live feeds and stuff like that is going to play a huge huge thing in getting off-road racing out. Like we said, look at stadium super trucks, and when they race at Adelaide or when they race at Gold Coast or Darwin, like, man, the fences are just lined and packed, and they're simply, doing one big jump and landing and then going around a heap of flat corners. Like, imagine, the general public
it is
their
pretty
mind.
cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's very cool. I shouldn't have said just doing a big,
just going around a flat corner.
Yeah, Robbie Gordon's going to come and like kick me in the dick or something. Like, I get it, but we're gonna have to make this one explicit. LA, that one was for you, buddy.
Wowzers.
But yeah, like, imagine what the public, like, I think about it. Like, we were into off-road racing, watch Dust to Glory, consume content on YouTube as much as we could. And then we got to Gundawindi that first time and saw Malapanya for the first time, saw Pro Buggies trophy trucks going down. Like, we were losing our mind as fans of the sport. So imagine, someone just on a Monday morning or Sunday morning, getting up, having their coffee, and somehow on YouTube, the algorithms put it all together. And, there's a live feed from the Bonduma Whoops, like the Bonduma station, pardon me, of off-road racing. Like, man, it's just it will take the world by storm. Like, it's crazy.
No,
yeah. I think what's going to happen in the future with Starlink and satellites is just going to be, it's going to take off-road racing to the public. And I think that's a good thing. Like, you think about what could be set up at a loop race in particular.
Yeah, Don's going to be very interesting for sure. Like, there's going to be a lot of data and a lot of information there. So I think it's going to be a cool race. Gundawindi has a huge potential as well. I totally agree. So particularly those big name brand races, like if they get onto the live stuff, it's going to be pretty darn cool, I think. So
well, it's come a long way from a couple of morons up in a commentary box at Gundawindi just deciding to zip tie a telephone to the post, and
it was an iPhone 7, mate.
Yeah, yeah,
with no data.
No data, but that's right. That's the biggest challenge, really, isn't it? Like, no bandwidth because you get to a race that has crap all reception and there's 100 people. But yeah, essentially, we just one day decided to zip tie a phone to the pole and put it up, and it was crazy how many people wanted to have a look at it. Sometimes you'd have like 50, 60, 70 viewers. So it's an interesting one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, it's going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out. Anyway, it's going to be very good, and yeah, I like it. Dirtbag Logistics, I like it.
Yeah.
Big shout out to the OG there, Fishgistics. Yeah,
Yeah.
we've been following your information for a lot of years over in Australia. It's the only way we can get that good information at a race. But yeah, no, listen, Josh, and then the other one that just stepping forward from that, the other one that I think is going to be very interesting to see. We all talk about. No, I'm sorry, I sound like a broken record, but can't wait to see. I feel like Shannon had some issues with a new car. I hope I'm not speaking out of school. That's what I sort of saw.
No, I believe they had boost issues. Could only get like 6 or 7 pound of boost out of it.
Yeah, because we've definitely talked about it. That car, to us, we've heard a lot of Shannon's race cars over the years in different situations. It sounded different this year. It sounded lazy, for want of a better word. And I think that when they get on top of that, and then once they start getting on top of all their suspension, because again, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening, they've gone from a rear engined mid gearbox, you know what I mean, like a rear engined Jimco Aussie spec, to this new hammerhead that has trailing arms and 28 inches of suspension travel or whatever it's got. They're currently running on a smaller tire. It'll be interesting because am I on the right track? I thought he was on 35s, on the old style MT cuts, not the big 37s. It'll be interesting to see if I'm right or wrong there. Again, I'm sure someone will tell me in the comments if I'm wrong, maybe Shannon himself. But moral of the story is what I saw. It looks no, true. But it looked like he was on 35s compared to some of the other cars, although the trucks now on 40s just make everything look so tiny.
I was going to say that's the hard part, is the juxtaposition. Like trucks on 40-inch tires just make everything look small.
Yeah, especially now that, again, we were on the wrong track. We thought Paul Wheels and Bose were small, like 6100 trucks.
Yeah.
Both of them told us that we were incorrect there. Like Paul's is essentially a light and full-size G6, and Bose is the same. It is essentially a full-size Mason, just in a lightened version for Australian. So they are massive trucks. Bo's truck is a work of art. If you get the chance to have a look at it, the inside carbon, the aerodynamics, everything that's got done, the G6 is exactly the same, just so we're clear, like beautiful trucks. And this isn't a shot at, but you look at like some of the older guys that are around now, like, because they've been around 10 years. And it, again, we talked about on the podcast with Paul and Bo, it's really just the way they've shuffled things around, like the seats are low, the chassis moves different. It's so interesting to see them side by side, and you go, oh, like it's just a lot of little 1% that they've done. It's very cool. So now it's going to be interesting to see, mate. I'm excited for Finke 2023, but even more so, the rest of the Australian Championship now is obviously we've got our top contenders, but we've had a lot of shuffling in the likes of the trophy trucks, like Bo's now with this Mason. Smoothie's had a good run. You know, where does Smoothie slide into that? Comiskey had a good run. You know, like it's going to be cool. And then even our pro lights, our pro buggies, like it's going to be so, our class 10s. The class 10s were so cool. Yeah. You know, Ali unfortunately had a rough day at Finke on the way down, had a much better run home, but had no power steering on the whole way down there. It made it quite difficult. So, yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see where the rest of the championship goes now, because, I mean, that's what we're focused on. And then the other couple that I'm very excited about is, again, it's made me even hungrier to get up to the Don River, because it's going to be a great race there. And even down to, did he say this in our meeting or not? When we talked to Toby, did he say he was interested in doing Don River?
Yes, very interested in being at Don. And so, hopefully, he did say at the finish line that the truck was ready to rock and roll.
Because I was going to say that was the key to it. He said, it'll depend on what the truck's like. Well, he said it was ready to go back to Finke. So to me, that means, hey, let's just spread the word. Toby Price is racing Don River Dash. No, I don't. I'm making this up. Luke Ayres is definitely racing the Don River Dash. But anyway, the moral of the story is it's going to be a great race, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens, mate.
Hey, I just wanted to touch on one of the things that you pointed out there about like Class 10 cars. What about Stephen Grayman in that Class 10 car at Finke? Qualified 13th overall in a Class 10. Yeah,
ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's a 2.4 Ecotech. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know if it was. I think it might have had like a Honda 2.5 or something in it. But essentially, it is a 4-cylinder naturally aspirated, 2.5 maximum capacity. Crazy fast.
You are right, Dan. Honda.
Yeah, I just remember reading it somewhere there that it had a Honda in it. And yeah, but again, can't stress this enough. So damn cool. And did have Tanner James in the navigator seat. So good to see Tanner back at Finke and having a good crack. Unfortunately, the boys didn't make it down on the way down.
No.
Again, if in the comments, if you know what happened there, because we were fully cheering that car when, again, sorry, Josh, you were down the track, but me and the other Josh were talking about it. And, the fact that there could potentially be a 10 car in the top 10 on the way down to Finke, that's madness. And if he had a run home, I think that he could have potentially run inside the top 5 because he was that fast.
Yeah, well, having a look at the qualifying results, he qualified in between Ryan Taylor and Peter Costello. So he qualified that 10 car in between 2 twin turbo pro buggies. Like, yeah, an amazing effort. But Steve Graham, the man, has always been an animal in that 10 car. But a very cool thing. Hey, now one of the things did want to mention as well, you were talking about Don River Dash, and we were talking about Ben Grabham with his tours. The word on the street, just got a text message from the man, the myth, Mick Marson, the Offroad Racing. He said that Ben Grabham will be at Don River D's bikes. So if you are interested in Don River dashing it on a motorbike, get onto the Facebook page before that we're looking at, Ben Grabham's bike tours, and hit him up. There you go. You can get on. Maybe we'll start to see. We were talking about it before. We might see an Ironman championship. So got to do the double at Finke, Don River, and Kalgoorlie, and you'll be officially crowned the hardest man in off-road racing in Australia, or woman.
Yeah,
or woman. Sorry, I'm not a misogynist. I'm not a. Don't blow me up on Instagram.
Yep. No, crazy stuff. Hey, well, the other thing, I guess, as we're getting towards wrapping up, Josh, is for the old algorithm, if you can give us a like on YouTube and subscribe to the page, that'd be awesome. We want to bring you as much dirt content as we possibly can. We've absolutely loved everyone listening along, haven't we, Josh? It's been a good time.
Yeah.
We've enjoyed the interaction. We wanted to do one of these live ones and see how it went with you guys.
Yeah.
And we appreciate
cool.
you listening to a couple of mugs with us. So it's a good time. We're going to try to do more live ones. We're even going to try to line up a couple of live guests and see how the interaction goes, keep them entertained, and it'll be a good time. Again, in the comments, let us know who do you want us to get in and comment. Have a podcast with, because we are going to head down towards Brisbane soon, aren't we, Josh?
Yep.
And try to catch up with a few people down there and set up a bit of a studio and do this. So again, long way from professional podcasters, but if you can put up with Josh and I's ugly mug, we'll try to bring you some damn good content in this off-road racing space. Because again, can't suggest this enough. All Josh and I want more than anything else, no one's getting rich going dirt racing. A great man once said, if you want to get $1 million racing off-road, you start with $2 million and go off-road racing. And that's it. The truth has never been closer. But anyway, well, the moral of the story is we love this stuff, and we can't wait to, bring you all these cool stories that we've always been talking about it, that we just love, all that side of it. And it's interesting because we've had so many awesome opportunities sitting around fires with some of the old school boys like the Nev Taylors and all those Bob Stanfields and all those sort of guys that, unfortunately, those guys no longer with us. And this is a perfect platform for bringing great stories so that you guys can catch up with some of the great stuff. Because again, Josh, I know we've talked about it before. If you haven't listened already, go and have a listen to the Toby Price podcast, because I think it was one that I really enjoy. I enjoy all of them, obviously, but I really enjoyed hearing about Dakar from a perspective that was, some of the stories behind how he actually got there. I knew that he'd raced with Jesse Jones. I assumed it was a Red Bull connection, but the actual story of him getting a phone call because he was happy to wipe windscreens. How cool is that, Josh? From our Australian Dakar champ, he's just over there being keen to be part of the sport. And I really enjoyed that side. So,
yeah, I agree, DC. Like I said, a huge shout out, particularly we had a bit of a run leading up to Finke. We managed to have
poor old Campbell.
Toby Price. Yeah, we managed to have Toby, Bo Robinson and Paul Wheel. And particularly Bo and Paul, they actually recorded with us in Alice Springs leading up to the race so we could get that extra Finke content out. But you're 100% right, DC. I think it gives us a great platform to get down and listen to those stories that we didn't necessarily know. I found the Paul Wheel one super interesting. The fact that he raced the original stadium trucks. Sorry, not super truck. Man, Robbie Gordon is just coming for me after this. But He raced the original stadium trucks. What he went through with PWR to keep that business afloat. A few things like that and his insight into the sport as well. Coming from being a V8 supercar driver and team owner, Safari, stuff like that. Yeah. And it is great. Yeah. So, once again, hit us up and let us know, who you'd like on the podcast. They're people that we want to get anyone and everyone on this podcast and give people an opportunity to tell their stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome, mate. Well, it has been an absolute great afternoon night catching up with you, mate.
Yeah.
My cup is empty.
I was about to say, what was in your cup, mate? Because I guess it's not tea in that Yeti.
There might be a little bit of Long Branch in it. Just a little whiskey.
Beautiful. Nice little nightcap. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.